What's going on? Ryan Troy back with another video for you today. And in this video, I want to talk to you about the state of Nikon after the Z6 III and hopefully what's next to come when it comes to Nikon. Now, if you are new to my channel, I have been shooting photography since 2009 and my first camera was a Nikon D90. That's right, a DX or APS-C camera from Nikon, and I have not switched. Don't plan on switching, and I've been here through some pretty rough times. Now, by rough times, what I mean is, it's no secret. We all know Sony, I'm not going to say invented, but definitely maximized on eye autofocus. And when other cameras came over to mirrorless, because of the head start and the innovation, I'm not going to downplay Sony. The innovation of eye autofocus, you know, some people had a hard time, and that is something that's common when you have, if you look at Apple products or iPhones and things like that, when you first implement something, it could be hard to perfect it, but eventually companies perfect it. And that's how I feel about Nikon. The reason why I didn't leave Nikon is because I was with Nikon because I am a photographer, right? If you started with DSLRs and stuff like that, eye autofocus wasn't there, you know, it wasn't there. So to not have something that other people have that you never had, it didn't do anything for me. Now, if Nikon photos were to look bad, then yeah, maybe I would switch. But since Nikon always been able to keep the great images and everything like that, it was no reason for me to leave. And it was so many people that would call Nikon a potato, and you know, all of the creators, the content creators, and just people would always talk about, you know, you shouldn't buy Nikon and all of this other stuff. But the thing that kind of was crazy to me is everybody always asked me what camera I shot with, and when I told them Nikon, they was blew away and all type of things like that. But it didn't make sense for me, and there are creators that go that route, and at one point in time I went that route as well, where I would try to call out the other creators and stuff like that based on things they said about Nikon. But I figured it's better to just prove it than make videos, you know, calling certain people out. So that's just what I did. I took my Z7 II that I had, and I went out and I proved it. You know, I proved that Nikon can take good photos. Now, one thing that I can do is admit when I'm wrong. And I guess this is me admitting that I was wrong about something that I pushed on my channel. The last thing that I want anybody out there watching my channel to feel is that I am going to always side with a company just because I love it, right? So what I'm admitting wrong on is the fact that with my Z7 II, I always came out saying that I felt that the eye autofocus in it could compete with any camera on the market. Now, that was plain ignorance. And by ignorance, what I mean is you don't know something if you haven't used it, right? Ignorance is not knowing, right? That's literally what it is. And I was ignorant to the fact that I felt that the Nikon Z7 II could compete with all of the other cameras on the market, considering I never used all of the other cameras on the market. Honestly, I never shot with Canons and I never shot with Sony cameras. So for me to make that statement at that point was ignorant, and it was wrong, and I can admit that. But the thing about it is, Nikon came out with the Nikon Z9, and to me, it was just too much of a camera. It was expensive, and it wasn't something that I wanted. And then after that, they came out with the Z6iii. And although at the time when it first came out, I love my Z7 II so much that I was like, I'm just going to wait for that, right? But Nikon went ahead on and sent me out a Z8, which is the Z8 that I'm recording on right now, for review. And soon as I got it, I was blown away. And it immediately let me know exactly what people were talking about when they spoke about eye autofocus, right? So between how with my Z7 II, I would say about 85% of the shots, right? I would hit them on the eye, but it did make me shoot differently with the Z7 II. So I would shoot a lot. And I actually carried that over to the Z8 before realizing I don't have to shoot as much. And the reason why I don't have to shoot as much is when I take those photos, it hits the eye every single time. So nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nothing's perfect. So is the Z8 perfect? No. But will I say it hits about 97% of the shots? Probably a little bit more, but it does, right? So with that being said, that let me know right there immediately, this is what people were talking about. This is the reason why people kept saying Nikon's eye autofocus was trash to them, right? If you are coming from a system that could hit 97 to 99% of your eye autofocus shots, anything beyond that to anybody will be considered trash, whether it is or whether it's not. So with that being said, the Nikon Z6 III, or the Nikon Z6 line in general, is Nikon's most popular line. And the reason is because it is affordable. Like, people can buy the Nikon Z6, you know, your average photographer, right? A lot of us, although you have professionals that only do photography full time, a lot of us also have jobs. I work in IT. So photography is still my business. I make over 40 grand a year doing photography as my side job, I guess you can say. But for me, a Z6 II, the Z line for me just won't cut it. And it used to. I used to have a Nikon D750 with 24 megapixels or whatever, but going into beauty, and if you see my work, you know, it's really detailed. Those higher megapixels have me never going back. So if I never did that, I could get away with a Z6, and that's why it is one of the most popular lines in the Nikon lineup. It's a great price, but in order for Nikon to change its reputation from being what it was, right? The Z9 wasn't going to do it. The Z8 wasn't going to do it, because people are always going to look at, okay, well, I expect a camera that I'm going to spend $5,000 or $4,000 on to be great, right? But everybody don't have $5,000 to $4,000 to spend on the camera. Can you make a consumer grade camera great as well? And that's what I think everybody sat back to sit here and watch. So what did Nikon have to do in order to do it? Well, they had to throw everything at it, plus the kitchen sink, and they did. So Nikon is currently sending me a Z6 III for review. I haven't got one yet, but all of my friends that used it says nothing but great things about it. Once again, no camera's perfect. You're not going to get a camera that is perfect, but for the price of the Z6 III, right? It is amazing. Like, it's great. And we all know that. If you looked at the specs, you know that it is amazing. 6K video at 60 frames per second. And me, I really do care about video. So no matter what, I always was going to buy a Z6 III. I mean, I owned a Z6 and I owned a Z6 II. Just for YouTube purposes, I always was going to buy that camera. Now, a lot of people wonder about the price of it. And the thing about it is this, right? I think the reason why the Nikon Z6 III, and don't get me wrong, is worth $2,500, right? But people thought it was going to be anywhere from $2,000 to maybe $2,200 or $2,300. Now, here's the reason why we know that wouldn't have happened. Nikon has so much success with the ZF, and the ZF sits at about $2,000, and I'm talking USD in case if you're not from America and you're watching this video. So it sits at about $2K with the ZF, and they had so much success with that camera. In my opinion, I think they had all of that success with the camera because people were waiting for that Z6 III and they didn't want to wait. And I was real close to pulling the trigger myself. I was going to go that route. Why? Because like I said, when it comes to cameras like that, I want them for my YouTube. That camera had 10-bit and it shot log. And that's something that we just didn't have internally with other Nikon cameras as far as like 10-bit video. I always had to use my Atomos Ninja 5. So with the success of that, the Z6 III could not be that because people would just buy the Z6 III. And the thing about it is, I do think Nikon rolled that out a really good way, because let's just say the Z6 III came out at $2,500 and the ZF didn't exist. And then they brought the ZF out, I don't know, let's say 3, 4, or 5 months later. Nobody will buy that ZF. The ZF is such a success because we needed that consumer range camera. So I do know that Nikon does a lot of discounts and stuff like that. So I do plan on seeing you know, in the upcoming future, the ZF going on sale, and it's probably going to go on sale for maybe about 1,800. I don't see it going for 15. It's too amazing of a camera to go that low immediately. But I do think that we will see that on sale for about $1,800 because I do think we will have a decline in ZF purchases. Now, I still plan on buying a ZF after I buy my Z6 III, but that's unless they do one thing. Now, we got over the state of Nikon right now. The Z6 line, the Z8, the Z9, phenomenal cameras, reputation definitely changing about Nikon. We see it. We see creators like Irene, which I cannot thank you enough, Irene, for all of these fantastic shoots that you are doing. We are watching some of the creators like Jared Polin that comes out and honestly, in my opinion, I just think it's fair, right? I seen him say things about Nikon in the future, but as I said before, me not shooting with other cameras, I disagreed, but I did not know better, right? So we see even your rough critics praising this Z6 III. That should let you know something. So the future for Nikon is bright. We're just scratching the surface. But if I could take a little bit more of your time, I want to talk about what I'm hoping to see next from Nikon. Now, here's the thing. Nikon is a company that listens. Now, what do I mean by Nikon is a company that listens? The Z8 wasn't created by Nikon. The Z8 was created by us. And what I mean by that is it was 2.5 years worth of rumors of this Nikon Z8. People thought that camera was ready to go. It wasn't. I don't even think Nikon was thinking about a Z6iii at that point, you know. We created that camera by bringing attention on what it was that we wanted. And I think once the community got so strong with wanting a Nikon Z8, Nikon said, hey, we need to put this camera into production. And they did, right? So it took them about 2 years or, you know, to go ahead on and get that camera out. But that's us. We did that. Please realize we did that. We spoke that into existence. So I'm gonna speak some more stuff into existence, like what I want Nikon to do with the Nikon Z5, okay? I'm talking the Z5 II. Now, I want you to think about this. If you remember the Nikon ZFC, and hopefully you do, it is the DX or the APS-C camera from Nikon that looks just like the ZF, but it's crop sensor, right? That camera had the internals of the Nikon Z50, right? So it was basically just how I explained about the ZF, how people would probably buy the Z6 III and not buy the ZF. I feel like that kind of happened with the ZFC. Yes, people bought it, and I think one of the biggest things was nostalgia and the flip out screen. The flip out screen made it so easy for you to record yourself. And that's just the times that we're living in right now. Well, not unfortunately, I love the flip out screen. So the ZFC was internally a Z50, just with cosmetic differences. And that's kind of what I want to see Nikon do with the Z5 Mark II. I want them to take the guts of a ZF and put it all into there with your, you know, common modern Nikon. Like this right here is just the, you know, the Z8, you know, with a nice grip right here, you know what I mean? And just to look like a Nikon camera. I would love for them to do that. And with price, either make it the same, or if you want to go up like $100 or something like that, then go ahead on and do that. Maybe 2 SD cards instead of a SD and a mini. And the reason why I feel like they couldn't do 2 SD cards in the ZF is because they wanted to keep it looking the way it looks. That's what I think. So if you have, like I said, a modern, you know, Nikon camera like this, you can put 2 SD cards in. It doesn't need a CF Express. It can be your entry level into full frame the way the Z5 was supposed to be in the beginning. 1 second. All righty then, there we go. All right, cool. So the way it was supposed to be there in the beginning. That's my thoughts when it comes to the Z5. Now, let's go through the Z7 III. And this is a controversial topic, right? I shot with a Z7 III. I shot with a Z7 II for a long time. I love that camera, right? But people wanted that to be the D850 replacement. And like I said, we spoke this into existence. We made the Z8 what it is right now. So I say this, let's not compete with the Z8. I think people think that in order for the Z7 to exist, it has to compete with the Z8. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that at all, actually. This is the thing. We see a lot of people out there, not even with just Nikon, but we see a lot of people out there that want these high megapixel cameras, right? Now, the Z8 has 46 megapixels. We got the Z7 line, the Z8, and the Z9 with over 40 something megapixels, right? Well, everybody wants 60, 55, and up, right? Why not just take the Z7 line and make this your high megapixel camera? Give it something like 4K 60, right? It doesn't need 8K, although it will be able to do 8K beautifully, but we don't want to compete. We don't want this to compete with the Z8 or the Z9. Let's make this a photography focused camera. 4K 60, not even 4K 120, 4K 60, 10-bit. If you want to do in RAW, do in RAW. Make sure it has 10-bit and make sure it has in log, though. That's a necessity in all cameras going forward. It's 10-bit at the minimum, right? Let's make sure that we have that, but give it like 60 megapixels or something like that. And in that way, because although we are in a time where people want video and photo, there are still a lot of photographers out there that just care about photography. And if you can give them just a straight photography camera without any of the bells and whistles when it comes to video, that doesn't compete whatsoever, in my opinion. Now let's talk about pricing, right? Now we do know that the Z8 has been on sale a lot lately for like 3,500 USD, that is, right? We can either put this Z7 III at 3,500, and when it goes on sale, it goes to 3,200, and a couple years past, it may even go down to 3,000. But I do not think that competes with the Z8 whatsoever, because the video capabilities in the Z8 is phenomenal. And if you want to keep that Z7 with the same form factor, or give it the same form factor of the Z6 III, because the Z6 III is just a tad bit bigger than the Z6 II was. If you want to do that, then go ahead on, like you can do that. Now, this video is getting really long, and y'all probably still aren't with me. Hopefully you are. So we're gonna go into DX a little bit. Now, me personally, I did not own a Nikon D500. I didn't, right? But I know a lot of you guys out there want one. So I'm going to let Nikon create it, but I just want to ask one thing when it comes to this, right? Since it was this phenomenal camera, this phenomenal DX camera, I think what you should do, right? This is going to be your premium DX camera. Give it image stabilization in the camera. So in-body image stabilization, or in-body stabilization. I do not know what just happened on my computer, but something did. So anyway, give it camera in-body stabilization, right? And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the lenses with the full frame lenses that Nikon have, and even third-party lenses like Viltrox and others, they don't have lens VR, and it's no stabilization in those cameras. So with that being said, if you give this camera that, then we can start using so many other lenses. I think the only knock on APC or DX cameras when it comes to Nikon is the lens choices, right? Like we don't have that many faster lens, like some other people may have. But the thing about it is Sigma and Viltrox are making them, but it's no image stabilization in those lenses. So let's go ahead on and put it into the bodies of the camera of that camera, right? Because this is supposed to be premium. You don't have to do it with a Z50 or a Z30. Z30 is great, by the way. But and if you do make another Z30, just give it 10-bit and it's perfect. But either way it go, in log. But either way it go, I think that's my time when it comes to what I'm hoping to see next from Nikon. I know this video ran kind of long and all of that, but let's go ahead on and get these other cameras out the way. Nikon, you have been doing a great, amazing job. I appreciate y'all even letting me work with you guys as much as you do. And until the next video, peace.